I would like to make a short introduction about Elon Musk and his company Tesla. He started a web software company named Zip2 in 1995, sold it for $307 million, of which he earned $22 million as part of his 7% share.
Growing up in South Africa, Musk was the oldest of 3 children and started school a year early. His father was an engineer, his mother May was a model and nutritionist. Elon read a lot of books and tried to stay out of people's way during school. Eventually, he ran out of books to read, so he read the encyclopedia. He got tested by IBM, and he was found to have one of the highest aptitudes they have ever seen for computer programming. Elon tried taking some computer classes, but he was way ahead of the teacher, so it didn't really help him. So he started programming a space game called Blastar. Elon had this ability to look at the world and say, this is a real problem that will happen in 20 years. Musk came up with an idea to bring newspapers into the digital age. He took a CD-ROM yellow pages, some mapping software, wrote a little code, and put it all together to create the first online city listings called Zip2. Media companies across the country were signing up. In 1999, Alta Vista bought Zip2 for $307 million in cash and $34 million in stock options. Musk was just 28 years old. Elon thought it would be a much more exciting and inspiring future if we were out there exploring the stars, as opposed to a future where we are forever confined to Earth. Elon Musk was thinking, when are we going to Mars? When is NASA going to Mars? He went to the NASA website and there were no plans to go to Mars, and no plan to even take the next step into space exploration. Elon Musk wanted to lead the human civilization to leave the planet Earth. Musk had the outrageous idea that private enterprise could re-energize space travel, and in June 2002, he found Space Exploration Technologies, otherwise known as SpaceX. He funded all of it himself. He came up with lower-cost ways to produce engines and run the company with very little overhead. The sum of these inventions in all the areas has led SpaceX to a roughly 3 to 4-fold improvement over the cost of all the rockets in the United States. He's kind of the Henry Ford of space, because Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, he just figured out how to make the automobile commercially viable. Musk had another idea to make electric cars to help humanity get off fossil fuels. So in April 2004, Musk helped launch Tesla with $6.3 million of his own money. It was the first automotive startup in decades and the only one born in Silicon Valley. For the first time, it was possible to drive over 200 miles and have performance that was directly competitive with what a gasoline car can do. Tesla was the first company to take those principles and put that into practice. They built some of the first battery packs in Musk's garage. By 2007, Tesla was running out of money fast. Tesla got to this point where they only had enough money to last a couple of months. Tesla was too important to let die. So Elon Musk took all his reserve capital and invested it back into Tesla. In September 2007, Musk flew to Germany with a scheme to raise extra cash by forging an alliance with Mercedes. He convinced the company that Tesla could provide battery packs for their cars and save Tesla from dying. But things wouldn't get easier for Elon. In 2008, Tesla was on the verge of financial disaster. Elon thought, either I take all the capital I had from the sale of PayPal and eBay, or the company would die. So Elon put in $40 million into Tesla and saved the company in its darkest hour.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
SpaceX is a private company of which Musk owns 54% of the stock and has 78% of the voting control. SpaceX is not an international company, and there's a major reason for this. The security regulations on military technologies limits it to US citizens and US-based companies. Musk has gone on the record saying that he does want to get international talent, but the US laws restrict him from doing so. The way SpaceX earns money is largely under wraps. The reason for this is that it's a private company, and thus is not required by the Securities and Exchange Commissions to reveal their financial details. You may have heard of investors in SpaceX, which does make it a decent chunk of change. Alphabet, originally known as Google, invested $900 million for a 7.5% stake in SpaceX, extrapolating the worth of SpaceX to about $12 billion. However, most of the money is not made from investors, and it certainly isn't made by selling goods to consumers. Instead, they rely heavily on launching satellites into orbit. SpaceX charges $62 million per launch, and $20 million more on top of that for government space missions such as resupplying the International Space Station or launching GPS satellites for the Air Force. Tesla, on the other hand, is a public company, so it makes finding their finances a lot easier. In 2017, they earned $2.7 billion in revenue. $2.29 billion were earned by selling Tesla cars, their main source of income. The rest was either in energy generation and storage or services and other miscellaneous things. The demand for luxury vehicles is seen all over the world, in almost every country, so naturally, Tesla is a multinational corporation. Elon Musk has a minority ownership stake of Tesla Motors. What this means is that he has less than 50% of the voting shares of the stocks in this company. In this case, he owns 27% of the stocks. The cultural norms for Tesla and SpaceX differ, and for Tesla itself, it depends on which part of the Tesla workforce you're in. If you're working in the sales division of Tesla, there's an attitude of, this isn't my problem, where employees like the company, but they don't necessarily like each other. And there's also a weird stigma where the sales force is typically haphazard, but not always planned through. Whereas if you work in the engineering division, everything is structured, and everything you do is planned, and there's a constant goal of working towards energy efficiency for the environment. If you're working for SpaceX, it's an entirely different beast. Many employees complain about the work-life balance there, and it's pretty much expected that if you're an engineer and you're working there, you're going to be doing overtime almost every day. But, on the other hand, your coworkers are like your family and friends, at least according to some of the employees.
It's better to get to a renewable future, a sustainable future sooner rather than later. Get there before we do the environmental damage, not after. And even if one could say that well, maybe there isn't that much environmental damage, to play the devil's advocate, maybe the environmental damage, maybe it won't be that bad. Why take the chance?